And we started looking at the first part and how Shaul and Israel's reaction wasn't unreasonable. How they were fearful and scared was not an unreasonable thing. Kind of, sort. So they froze in fear. And I connected that to us as believers and as people, that we have to look at how problems are real in our lives and address those issues and those problems. And also we looked at how this went on for 40 days and how problems persist. Problems go on for a long time, and how, oftentimes longer than what we hope and what we expect. And we have to be willing to prepare ourselves for that. So where we stopped at we introduced David, and we stopped at verse 11. It says, I think I might have been a little further. Yeah, 16. So we stopped at verse 16, and that's where Goliath drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. So as I mentioned, this is going on for 40 days. Goliath has gone out and confronted them for 40 days, and nobody's done anything about it. And as I mentioned earlier, as we connect that to our lives, you can't just pretend your problems away. You can't just hope that after a little while it will disappear. They persist and they go on. And oftentimes when we let them go on for so long, they just grow and compound because something else comes along with that. So that was their strategy. And as I mentioned, kind of their reaction was reasonable, but in another way it wasn't, because they knew Yahweh. They should have known to go to Yahweh and not allow this to continue on for so long. So where we pick up in verse 17, we're going to see that David starts to step in, and we see a shift that's about to happen. So verse 17 says, "And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brother an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Shaul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. So David goes to deliver these things, and he walks up. And as he walks up, he sees Goliath come up, and Goliath issues that same challenge, and David heard it. And when David heard it, he sees all the men of Israel, they flee, they just run away, scared, and because they're intimidated by this problem and this issue. And verse 25 says, And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that has come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spoke to the man that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered after him this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. So we reach this point where finally David is on the scene, and he sees this. And as we mentioned, David is the youngest of 4. He's the shepherd boy, but he hears Goliath, talking all this mess and this junk, but his reaction is not the same as everyone else's. He speaks up and says, who is this man? Who is this supposed to be? And he calls him an uncircumcised Philistine. Really just who is this nobody that thinks he can defy the armies, not the armies of Shaul, not the armies of Israel. He says the armies of the living God. He starts positioning this right off the bat in the correct way about whose fight this is. And that is going, as we keep going further and further, we see that that makes all the difference. He didn't come saying, I'm going to take them down. He said, the armies of the living God. This is Yahweh's army. This army belongs to Yahweh. So who is this man that he can come against these armies? Who is he to Yahweh? He positioned it as there's nobody bigger than Yahweh. And if we are Yahweh's army, then he can't do anything to us or, against us. And he can't come against us. So he was confused as to why are y'all running scared? We serve Yahweh and y'all shaking in your boots, but we got Yahweh on our side. This ain't making no sense to me. And, he was sincere in his confusion and his questioning because of his faith and his stance. And we have to look at it the same way, is when we start to buckle against problems or issues, or we're fearful of issues, and we're just dwelling in a state of struggle. Why are you here? Why are you allowing this thing to overtake you? That's a question that Pastor has presented us, is why? Why are you afraid of this thing? Why are you allowing this thing to overtake you? Why are you allowing this thing to present itself as if it's bigger than Yahweh in your life and you should know Yahweh? That's what I mentioned earlier. David knew, and he wasn't even a soldier. He wasn't the king, but he knew who that army belonged to. It belonged to Yahweh. He had that confidence. So why are you all having the same confidence? And this is just a man I see standing here. His size doesn't matter. His stature doesn't matter, because Yahweh can defeat him. He had that confidence and that assurance. It's the same thing with us, is that when problems come, we can't be fearful and we can't break down and we can't allow them to become bigger than Yahweh. We have to have that same stance as, who are you to Yahweh? Who are you to come against me, the child of Yahweh? I belong to him, and he's protecting me and keeping me. So who are you to him? We have to have that same confidence and audacity that David stepped into this field full of soldiers. All these people that are supposed to be strong. And here is the shepherd boy, and he has this confidence and this audacity to step in a way that none of them could do. And we should show up in the same way. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Well, let's talk about it now, because I think that there should be a difference in how we show up and compared to others. We shouldn't look like everybody else. We should stand out. How we speak should stand out, and we should, walk in that. We shouldn't approach problems in the same. That's why it doesn't make sense for us to say, I'm coming up the rough side. Everybody coming up the rough side of the mountain. The struggle is real for everybody. So if you're a believer and you're supposed to have Yahweh, then what's so different about you? If I'm struggling up the rough side of the mountain, you coming up and you calling on Yahweh, well, let's go together, because Yahweh ain't doing nothing for you, because this mountain is rough for me. The struggle is real for me too. So if it's no different, then how is it serving Yahweh different? Why is it special and unique to serve Yahweh? And what's the incentive for? There is none for people today. There's absolutely none for people today to come to church. And people say that all the time, because you're doing the same thing I'm doing. You looking how I'm looking. You struggling how I'm struggling. Your mind is in shambles the same way I'm in shambles. You in this club drinking like I'm in this club drinking. So what's the difference? How is it any different? The way I get relief is the same way you get relief. So what is Yahweh doing for you? What's so special about him? We're not showing up like David. We're not showing up with that confidence and that audacity to say, who are you? Who is this? No matter what it is. If it's a financial problem, it's a mental problem, it's someone on your job, we have to have that stance to say, who are you to Yahweh? What can you do against Yahweh? You can't do anything. We have to approach Satan with that too. He cannot do anything to us. The problem is he has expertly convinced people that he has power that he does not have over us as believers. He has power over the world. He has none over us. None except for what we surrender to him. And we have to understand that. If we don't give it up, he don't got it, because it ain't nothing he can do. And we have to understand that. And the word says that, he can't do anything but these small physical things. And I think I mentioned this before, like with someone like Stephen, he thought that, railing those men up to take Stephen's life was doing something. He didn't do anything to Stephen. Stephen died in grace and in glory, and we still respect him today and talk about him today. His witness still continues today, and he went on to heaven. And as I mentioned, a place where Satan can't go. He got booted out of. He didn't do nothing to Satan. He didn't do anything, to Stephen. He didn't do anything. So we have to look at it like that there's nothing this enemy can do to me. No matter what he says or what he does or what he tries to present or how big he tries to present himself, he has no real power. And that's how David approached Goliath. It doesn't matter physically how it looks. This man ain't got no power compared to Yahweh, compared to his glory and his wonder. So we're going to see it continue on, because something that happens, though, is that when you approach situations like this, people don't always like it. And people have an issue with it. And it happened with David. So picking up in verse 28, and it says, and Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke unto the man. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. You know, when people see you taking a stand, they have an issue with it, especially when they're not addressing the fear and the cowardness in their own lives. And a lot of people have done that. I'm too cowardly to take a stand against Satan. So there's an issue with you because you are taking a stand against him. You are surrendering to Yahweh and fighting the right way. So there's a problem with you. And people do that today. And it's the weirdest and strangest thing is they come against people, you know, they say, oh, you so holy. You know, you one of them holy people. Yeah, we supposed to be, fool. That's what we're supposed to be striving for. Like, why is that a bad thing? Or why has it been seen like a bad thing that I'm trying to live right? That's exactly what we're supposed to do as believers. But there are people in the church that have tried to turn that as if living righteously and trying to live the word the right way is a wrong thing. No, dummy, that's what we're supposed to be. That's the whole point of this. And people have allowed themselves to be shamed into not standing for righteousness and holiness. And that's all we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to have faith. We're supposed to come against evil and say, hey, that's not right. We're supposed to be different. We're supposed to stand out. And if that's offensive, it should be. We're supposed to offend. That's all Yeshua did the whole time he walked this earth. He offended. And the people he offended the most was the church. People that were supposed to be righteous. People that were supposed to be holy. And he was showing them what it really was to be righteous and holy. And they hated it because it made them realize I'm not what I'm supposed to be. And I can't get the money I'm supposed to get, and I can't fool people because you're showing them what the real is. And that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be doing the same exact thing he did, but people aren't doing that because you've accepted the struggle being real, so all we present is the struggle. And that's such a poor view of the faith in the church and who Yahweh is. It's struggling. A God that's supposed to be able to do all things, that's supposed to be able to deliver us out of all things. And the most we can present to people is the struggle, and normalize that and make songs about it and hymn and hoot and holler about struggling when we serve a God that can do all things. That is a problem. And we have to start addressing that problem because we're fighting, but we're fighting against nothing because Satan is sitting back watching us do this play game of church and allowing people to do that. You can do all the shuffling and scooting and hollering in church all you want. If you ain't fighting the right way, then he ain't got no problem with you because you ain't doing nothing against him. They could have talked all the noise they wanted against Goliath. They could have. But if they didn't have Yahweh, it wouldn't have mattered. They still would have went out there and got whooped. And that's what's happening with people. You talking all this noise. You go into church, you saying all these scriptures, but you're not serious about it. You're not utilizing them in the right way. And so these Goliaths and not even the foxes is tearing you up. The little foxes in life is getting the best of you because you have no real defense and definitely no real offense because we don't know how to fight and we don't know how to war against the enemy. So we're losing this fight because we don't look like Yeshua. We don't look like David. We don't look like the examples that are presented to us. And we got to do something different about that. We've got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. And say, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the rough side. I can't take no more rough sides and no mountains no more in my life. I need something different. I need that mountain to be removed. And that's possible in Yeshua, but we have to have the faith to believe it, the audacity. This was a crazy thing for this shepherd boy to come in and believe this, but he had the audacity to believe in Yahweh and say, it don't matter what it looks like. It don't matter what it seems like. I believe in my God. So I'm moving forward. We can keep reading. So 29 says, and David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? And he turned from toward another and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. He wasn't being, rude or condescending. He was just walking in faith. So he really didn't understand, like, what you talking about? I'm not, trying to, put on or do anything evil. We got Yahweh. Like, why are y'all tripping? It's really just what he was saying. And that was his stance. And they couldn't understand that because they didn't have the same faith. And we have to be okay with not being understood. You got to be okay with people having an issue with you and not liking you. And that's something that we have to deal with as believers. People are going to reject you. People are going to have issues with your faith, and you got to be okay with that. But you got to stand in that. People are going to have an issue with righteousness and holiness. But you got to be willing to say, I'm serving Yahweh. I'm not serving man. I'm not trying to please you. I'm trying to please Yahweh, and stand in that. So 31 says, and when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Shaul, and he sent for him. And David said to Shaul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Shaul said to David, thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. So again, on paper, this does not look like a good matchup. You know, you have an experienced warrior like Goliath, you know, huge as all get out, right? But also he's fought before, you know, as Shaul just mentioned, he's a man of war from his youth. He's been trained how to fight. And then you compare that to the youngest of four, you know, a shepherd boy that ain't never been in no fight. Well, on paper, I would probably say David would lose too, right? Nobody would dispute that, right? But there are often a lot of things that naturally look bad, right? There are problems that look like this is an impossible situation. This is a difficult situation on paper and naturally. We have to understand that we're not serving a natural God. We're serving a God that is bigger than the natural, that controls the natural. So even if on paper it looks a certain way, we have to know that in Yahweh, it doesn't look the same way. He can make a way. And I want to break off quickly to look at an example of that. So I want to go to Exodus 14, and we're going to start at verse 10. And this is picking up with the children of Israel, and they're in the wilderness. Well, forgive me. This is before they get to the wilderness. This is after they leave out of Egypt. And we know that the plagues came. Yahweh had the plagues come. They see all this. Moshe comes, and he uses Moshe to deliver them. And as they're leaving, you know, the Egyptians just want them to leave so badly that they're giving them stuff, you know, giving them items so they can hurry up and get out of Egypt because so much has happened. Yahweh has brought those plagues. But as we pick up in verse 10, we'll see that, of course, Pharaoh's heart was hardened and that a change happens so that he starts to pursue them. So verse 10 says, and when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto Yahweh. And they said unto Moshe, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. I want to stop here because I think this is another problem people have. You know, one of our biggest enemies is our mouths. We run our mouths and we just get to shooting off at the mouth and saying any old thing, especially when we have problems and issues. You get to talking and you just start talking foolishly and just saying anything. And that's what they were doing here. Like, what are you talking about? Y'all just came from slavery and they were horrific to these people. If you rewind to Exodus, it started off with them killing babies. You know, these were terrible people that were horribly mistreating them. It wasn't no good life in Egypt for them. But now because, you know, they're approaching them and they're coming up behind them, oh, we would have been better off as slaves. Do you know how wild that sounds to say, you know, out loud? But that's what they were saying. Just you should have left us as a slave, Moshe, you know, in bondage. That's so crazy to say. But when we have issues and problems, people end up saying some of the most foolish stuff. And you got to learn how to just shut your mouth and hold your peace when there are issues and problems, and stop talking so much. Because you say things, and sometimes there are things that you say that you can't take back. And that happened to them. They stayed in this cycle of things happening and them running off at the mouth and saying the most ridiculous things. And eventually Yahweh said, that's enough. Y'all ain't got to go. And y'all will die off in this wilderness, and I'll let your children go. And that's what happened to them, because they talked too much. And they never had faith. And they complained all the time. And we have to make sure that's the issue with saying I'm coming up the rough side of the mountain. What? How was that faith? How was that trusting in Yahweh? That's a poor confession you making over your life, and you're saying that constantly when you have an issue or a problem. When Yahweh said, tell that mountain to move. Don't come up the rough side of it. Move it out the way. Speak the word and get it out your way. Not say, oh, I'm coming up the rough side of the mountain. Oh, I fall down, but I get up. Why are you speaking these poor? And another thing the enemy has done is, under the guise of a good old hymn, he has caused people to put things on their lives that you shouldn't be, and say things that you shouldn't be saying as a believer, and you shouldn't be. These old sayings that sound good, stop saying them if they don't align in the words. Just speak the word. No matter how cute it sounds, leave it there. I don't want to hear that. I want the word, and that's why I want spoken over my life. I don't want your little cute saying that you can put on a t-shirt or post on Facebook. I need the word over my life, and that's all we should be speaking. When you get to saying whatever, that causes issues. And that's what a lot of people are doing. You using your mouth to fight against a problem that your mouth is not going to win. It's just going to get you in trouble. That's a life lesson too, just in general, right? You know, we have to learn how to stop talking so much and speak the word and speak what Yahweh said. So verse 13, and Moshe said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of Yahweh, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. Yahweh shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And I want to stop there, because that's the core of what the Holy Spirit is getting at in this, is that we should be allowing Yahweh to fight for us. We have a God that wants to fight for us, that wants to win these battles for us. Let him fight. Stop talking. Stop trying to win it yourself. Stop trying to work it out yourself, and let Yahweh fight. We are exhausted because we shouldn't be fighting in the first place. We fight by surrendering to him, by doing his will. He's taken on the heavy load. He came down to this earth in Yeshua to show us, I'll take on the heavy part of this for you. He said, take on my yoke, for the burden is light. This should be light work for us, because he took on all the hard parts and continues to do so for us if we believe and have faith in him. I'll fight for you. And that's what Moshe is telling them. Let Yahweh win it for you. You don't have to. You don't have to win this for you. You don't have to outthink this situation. You don't have to outwork this situation. You don't have to solve it. Let me fight for you. That's how we war. Is letting the God that we serve war for us, fight for us, and lead the way. And that's the attitude and the stance that we have to take. Is that I'm not fighting this. I've got God in heaven. He's the one fighting for me. He's the one leading this charge. So 15 says, and Yahweh said unto Moshe, wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children that they go forward. But lift up thy rod and stretch out thy hand over the sea and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts and upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh, which have got me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. You know, when Yahweh responds to Moshe, it's not in a harsh way. It's just saying, I told you to move forward. You know, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to cry out to me. Move forward like I told you to. And you know, it's one. I'm going to make sure. You know, so you don't have to cry. You don't have to worry. You don't have to be distressed. Go forth. You know, one thing I read was saying, like, this is a command. Like, you press on is what he's saying. And you don't worry about what's going on back there. If I told you to go forward, then forward is the direction you go. And it doesn't matter what's in the way. Because no matter, I can move it out the way. And we have to stop doubting Yahweh. If Yahweh tells you to do something and go in a particular direction, don't stutter step and say, well, Yahweh, this is here. Or, you know, this might happen, or this might come. And I'm saying, what is that? What you talking about? I can move it out the way. I can clear a pathway for you. And it's no obstacle that's too big for me. One thing that I love that Pastor mentioned, I mention it often because I just think it's something that we should embrace as people. And we'll see it in action in a minute when we read this, is that Yahweh is the God of truth. And I just think that that's so special and so powerful when we say that he's the God of truth, that whatever he says is true is true. That means that no matter what it is, no matter what the situation is, if we say this thing is true, if he says it's true, then it's true. And it doesn't matter what it looks like or what it feels like. If he says you're healed, then it doesn't matter if the doctors say this is something that can't be fixed or healed. No, you're healed in the name of Yeshua. If he says his circumstances change, then it's changed, and it doesn't matter what anybody else's prior experience was. I think that this is something, again, for examples that we can look at, the disciples. This is why they were able to do so many incredible things, is because they walked in that. They were able to pick men up by their hands and their legs be restored strength, because they had that type of audacity to believe that it doesn't matter. You know, I think it might have been last week where Pastor mentioned Shaul shaking that snake off. You know, it wasn't a second thought for him to say, I don't care if this is the deadliest snake in the world, you know, I'm healed in the name of Yeshua. And when they say they believe, they really believe. And we've got to start matching that audacity that they had and walking in that. So we'll jump ahead to, we'll look at 19. And it says, the angel of Yahweh, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them. But it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. I like this too, because something I read, it talked about how, you know, this cloud was leading them at first. And the angel of Yahweh, and they positioned themselves in between them and in between the Pharaoh and the Egyptians. And I just thought that was special, because it also shows that Yahweh has us covered on all angles. There is not a part of our lives that we are not protected and covered. He's got your front, he's got your back, he's got your side, your right side, left side, top, bottom. Yahweh is surrounding you, and he'll make sure you're covered on all ends. There wasn't a space in this where they were ever in danger. They were protected, being led, they were protected from behind. So that means you don't have to worry about looking behind you and saying, what's coming up behind me? I got you, I got your back. You don't have to look ahead and say, this is in front of me, this obstacle is here, oh, I'm going to clear that out of the way for you. You don't have to look to the side and say, well, what's going to happen over here? Yahweh says, I got you covered in that direction too. And that's what we should have assurance of and faith in, is that no matter the angle, we're protected and we're covered by Yahweh. And we can walk in that confidence. And verse 20 says, 21, and Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahweh caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on their left. You know, I always think about that had to be such an incredible sight to see. You know, an entire sea split open in front of you, and you walk open on dry land, and it's two walls of water that you're walking past. You know, that's Yahweh, and that's his power, and that's the miracle of him. And that's why he told Moshe to go forward. You know, they saw, hey, there's a sea on this side of us. You know, there's this army behind us. And, you know, again, naturally on paper, that looks wild. Like, what am I going to do about this? You know, this army is approaching me. You know, we can't swim that fast. And we got children with us. We got horses and all that stuff. We ain't going to make it. But Yahweh says, I can split this sea open. I can do whatever it is I want to do to solve this. He could have, you know, snapped them out of existence if he wanted to, like Thanos, if he felt like it, you know, but I can solve this however I want to and fix it however I want to, you know, so you don't have to worry. And it's the same thing it don't matter what it looked like. I can do all things, you know, and we should embody that. That's in the word, you know, that nothing is too hard. Nothing is impossible for him. So we've got to stop getting the situations and problems and allowing fear and doubt and uncertainty to get us and say, wait a minute, Yahweh made a highway out of the sea. You know, he made two walls out of the sea, and they walked out. They didn't walk on wet land. It wasn't muddy. They walked on dry land. And then when them Egyptians came up and thought they was going to get him, he closed it right back up and allowed them to keep going. So he can do whatever it is and that's the God that I serve. And that's the confidence that David approached with, that this is the God I serve. He did this for us. Well, I'm going to be worried about, you know, this is, he opened up a sea. And y'all sitting here scared of Goliath, this one man? That's crazy. And we have to look at it the same way to say that Yahweh did this one thing. He can, you know, he'll do it, you know, another thing. You know, we have the testimonies of the word. We have our own testimonies, and we should rely upon that. And we'll look at that in a minute. We'll go a little bit further. Then I'll land the plane. So back to 1 Samuel 17. And we're going to jump down. We're going to pick up because now we know that Shaul found David, Shaul told David he can go out to fight. But he does mention to him that, this matchup is not ideal. He does make it clear on that. But David has a response to that. So 34. And David said unto Shaul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, Yahweh that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Shaul said unto David, go, and Yahweh be with thee. So in this, David is recalling past experiences, and he's saying, well, wait a minute. Yahweh delivered me out of from a lion and a bear. He gave me the strength that I needed to overcome both of them. And Yahweh is going to do the same thing for Goliath. And he's recalling past experiences. And he's saying, well, if Yahweh did it here, what's so different now? And if Yahweh did it with this lion and with this bear, who is this man? And in a similar effect, the children of Israel should have had that same attitude. Yahweh had just brought all those plagues to the Egyptians. He had just, delivered them out of Egypt to the point where the Egyptians were giving them stuff to get out of Egypt, giving them their items to get out of Egypt. He had done all these incredible things, but then they get to this new problem and they almost blow a gasket, begging to be slaves again. And that's a crazy thing, And sometimes as believers, we do the same thing. Yahweh has worked things out for us time and time again. And here comes a new problem, and we turn into the children of Israel, begging to go back into slavery. You may not be saying that, but you turn back to the same old things, poor thinking. Sometimes people alcohol, some people drugs, sometimes your mouth. That's back to slavery, because those are the things that once had your life in the first place. And you turn back and you rely on your old master to try to fix it for you, or to just reign over you, instead of surrendering to Yahweh. Instead of saying, wait a minute, he already delivered me. The thing is we're not re-delivered every time something. You are delivered, full stop. And that deliverance lasts for an eternity. It never ends. And we have to understand that. So when I get to a new problem, it's not re-deliver me, re-save me, Yahweh. No, I'm saved. I'm free. This is won for me, because Yahweh won the battle and the victory for me. And that's the attitude and the stance that we have to approach it with. And that's what David was saying. I know I got the victory already. This W is mine. I got it in the bag, because I done seen Yahweh do it. And so I know he's about to do the same thing this time. And that's the attitude that we have to approach things with. 38 says, and Shaul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Shaul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off of him. And he took in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a script, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. So I want to stop there to look at something. Because, the world's solutions will never fit us, as believers. And trying to apply the world's solutions will not work. David could not use this armor to try to win this battle, and he knew it. He said, I haven't proved it. I haven't used this. I haven't tested this. But I do know Yahweh. I do know that he'll work it out. Your armor, I don't know about. I don't know nothing about the solution you presented me, and I haven't tried it out. I do know Yahweh, so I don't need this. And it's the same approach that we have to have. If Yahweh has worked it out for us and done, I don't know nothing about the world solutions. I can't go back to that. But I've tried Yahweh, and I know that he's all right, that he'll work it out for me, that he'll get it done for me. So you can't try to use the world solutions to fix issues and problems, and it ain't going to work. It don't even feel right no more to try to go back to the way of the world and the things that you used to do, or it shouldn't anymore. It shouldn't be a fit for you. It should feel weird to you to say, I'm going to go back to the ways of the world to try to solve this. I'm going to try to fix it on my own. It shouldn't work like that for you no more. You should say, I'm going to use Yahweh. And what Yahweh uses sometimes is not at all close to what the world uses. Because all Yahweh told him was to go with no armor and go with a slingshot. And again, on paper, that sounds wild and crazy. that I'm about to slingshot this giant to death. A normal person would say, Yahweh, I can't at least get a sword. I can't get something, But David had the audacity to have faith to say, okay, Lord, this is what you told me to go get. This is what's going to take him down. And he went and did it immediately. 41. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. So I want to stop there because something the Holy Spirit gave me is it says, just because you stand up to problems doesn't mean they will immediately go away. So David approached with confidence. He approached boldly, but Goliath didn't back down. He stood his ground too. And he talked his stuff too. And said, like, who are you supposed to be? Because he looked David up and down and said, you ain't nothing to take me on. You're small. You're ready. You're young. You clearly are a shepherd boy. Who are you supposed to be? And we have to understand that too, that, the enemy will try to puff up. He'll try to stand his ground too, but he can't, in Yahweh. If you stand in the name of Yeshua, if you stand firm in faith and you stand your ground, he can't do nothing with that. But sometimes he tries to puff up. He tries to have a problem remain for a little longer to see, are you going to lose faith? Are you going to lose gas? And sometimes a lot of people do. They get intimidated because the problem don't immediately move. And the problem, doesn't shift the way they want to. And it's like, I thought you was going to move quickly. And, you ain't moving as quick as I thought you were. And in that, you lose faith. You lose steam. But we got to say no. And the enemy knows that when you take a stand against him, there's nothing he can do. But he is expecting you to back down. If I puff up, and that's what Goliath was doing. He started talking all that noise and talking crazy. He expected David to get scared and back down. But David wasn't about that. David, which we're about to see in a minute, knew who he served. I want to break off real quick and go to Ephesians chapter 6. And verse 10. Actually, let's do this, and then we'll end it. So let's read David's response in Exodus. So we're going to go back. 1 Samuel 17. So Goliath just came back at David. He saw him walk up. He's talking all this noise, says, Am I a dog? But David has a response. And I think his response is important. So it says in 45, we're picking up at verse 45. It says, Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with the sword and with the spear and with the shield, but I come to thee in the name of Yahweh of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will Yahweh deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that Yahweh saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is Yahweh's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came near and drew to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hands in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So we see David, Goliath stands his ground, but David takes a stand too, but not in himself. He took a stand in Yahweh. And, one of the most powerful things he said is the battle is Yahweh's. But if you read throughout, he is constantly mentioning Yahweh. I come to you in the name of Yahweh. Yahweh will deliver me. This battle is Yahweh's. He surrendered to Yahweh in that moment and let Yahweh fight for him. It was not David's strength with that sling that won it. It was not so great and so powerful that he overcame. It was Yahweh that worked through David to win this battle, that took that single stone and led it to Goliath's forehead. And that's how he won. He didn't exhaust any of his own energy. He trusted in the power of Yahweh, and he won the war. He overcame because he knew how to fight and he knew how to war. And he took a stand. And we have to do the same thing. We're not going to win this you do not have it in your own self to win this. If you keep fighting on your own, you will lose. If you keep trying to outthink problems, you will lose. You keep trying to solve stuff yourself, you will exhaust yourself. And there are so many believers that are doing that today. We are wearing ourselves out because we are trying to fight this battle on our own. Because we're using a stance that is off center. These songs written by these people don't know what they're talking about. These sayings that have no basis in the word. This mindset that is worldly, that says I can fix it and solve it myself, but we're not fixing it and solving it ourselves. People are struggling, and the struggle should not be real in the church. It should be victory. It should be testimonies. It should be overcoming. But we're not here. We're hearing less and less of that. And people are seeing it on the outside. And there's no incentive to come in and be saved and be different, because what is different about this? And we have to make the decision to say, I want to know how to fight, Yeshua. I want to surrender to you and fight in the proper way and win this. And when we do that, it's not even a thought of winning. The victory is yours. It's secured. And that's what the enemy is trying to keep us from understanding. This battle has already been fought. He's already lost. His L is taken. His fate is sealed, and he knows that. He's just trying this misery loves company. And that's all he's trying to do, is recruit company to his misery that is sealed. Because he can't do anything about what's going to happen to him. The most I can do is recruit people to be miserable with me for an eternity. And we cannot allow ourselves as believers to be recruited into his mess. We've got to fight back, but we got to know how to fight and fight back in the right way. And that the answers are in the word, and they're in Yahweh. And we have to surrender to him, and he will fight for us, and he has already won for us. Praise Yeshua. Father, my name is Yeshua. We just thank you for bringing us here this morning, Lord, allowing us to hear your word, allowing us, Lord, to be blessed, Lord, and teaching us, Lord, how to fight and fight properly in you, Father, so that we won't exhaust ourselves, Lord, in this battle, Yeshua, but that we would know that it's already won in you. If we surrender to your will and to your way and to your power, Father, then the victory is ours. And we thank you for the victory, Yeshua, in all things, over our minds, Yeshua, over our bodies, Lord. We thank you for the ability, Lord, to forge forward in you, Lord. And no matter the obstacle that is before us, Lord, you will move it out of the way, Lord. You will change and shift it, Lord. And we thank you for your power, your grace, and your mercy. We give you all the praise, all the glory, and all the honor. In Yeshua's mighty name we pray. Amen and amen.